Don't tell your parents where we went.
I'm sort of a spy.
Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode something for some time.
214.
214.
Area code for Dallas, Texas.
Is it? Okay, we're gonna do area codes now from now on, right? This is directed. This is dedicated to Dallas, Texas. Episode 214 for the end of August 2024, and now it is the end of August. I was talking to I got a chance to guest teach in a podcast class. I got cool. Well, not I was guest teach. I was a guest instructor or a guest for a podcast class. But that's actually not what I was talking about. I was going to think of this. There was a student. I get my classes all mixed up. There was a student in one of my classes, and she was like, "August is almost over." I'm like, "It's only halfway through. Don't worry about it." But now it's almost over. I asked her, "Do you have to go to school in September?" She's like, "Yes." I'm like, "Oh." I said, "I don't."
But if you want to go to school, that's good news. If you don't want to
go to school, it's not good news. Yes, that's true. But yes, we're at the end of August. And we have our second summer. We had false fall already here. We had our temperatures
We're going straight into frigid winter or something. There's snow like an hour and a half west of here.
Oh, I don't want, okay. I'm going to buy snow boots this year, because if I buy snow boots, that means we're not going to get snow this year.
Okay, well, do whatever voodoo stuff you got to do, and that's all good. That's just, yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. It's 9. I'm sitting here. Now it's 86 degrees, but my room is a lot warmer for some reason. So I'm sitting here with a bandana, with a babushka on my head, schwitzing, trying not to schwitz, and
schwitz.
Yeah, schwitz. So I did get a chance to. Here's my news. Here's some stuff. We're catching up.
News with Antonio.
I was invited to a podcasting intensive class at Brick, and it was a 2-hour class, and I talked to the instructor, and I said, I don't know if I've got 2 hours worth of stuff to talk about. And I offered, to be a guest because of this show. I've got some experience doing some podcasting.
Yeah.
And so I put together a quick little presentation, and I edited our last show the day before. I did most of the stuff on it, like all the hard work on it, but I left the finishing touches for the class. And then I actually published. If I actually published, I set up I didn't publish it because it was one day before our regular date. Mm-hmm. So, but I did everything up to that. I did the cover art. I talked about writing the description, which I used ChatGPT to help us summarize, because it does all the transcription and stuff like that. Yep. But I ended up taking more than 2 hours in the class, believe it or not. And the class...
They didn't mind?
No, they didn't mind. And actually, they were all they were all sticking around, and they really enjoyed it. And I actually kind of surprised myself. I'm like, oh, yeah, I actually know what I'm talking about. And what's funny is that...
a few stories from the trenches.
Yeah. And, a few, for 10 years, 10 years plus. But, what's interesting is that they're being taught a different workflow than I do. And basically, I try to tell them, like, whatever workflow you end up doing, don't change it. Unless you have a real good reason. I always say that to my photography students, because you have a good workflow. Once you start changing things, unless you have a really good reason, it's a good way to send yourself into chaos and frustration and stuff like that. So, you may not get the 100% workflow. If you get an 85% workflow in podcasting or Lightroom, whatever it is, I say stick with it. And, you can gradually increase and decrease the percentages, but don't go too crazy, because every time I have a student who changes their workflow in something, they're like, well, I tried to copy the things, and I'm like, no, did you pay attention to what I said? Anyway.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. I've gone from teaching photography to being a guest on podcasting class, which got thumbs up. Apparently, I got the next week the teacher emailed me and said that the students were still talking about the session that I had, and so
that's great.
That was fun. That was fun. And so I've had like a whole bunch of classes. I think it's like 4 between our episodes. 3 or 4, maybe 3 photography classes, and then the podcast class. So it's been a teaching August. And, I'm not tired of it, but it takes a lot of work. And then I got asked by another library in Brooklyn to set up a class for teaching kids, I think between like she said 8 and 12-year-olds with their parents.
Tweeners.
Yeah, in the library for doing an hour class, 3 1-hour classes, separate classes, not one continuous class, but 3 separate sessions. And so I've got to come up with a class and we're going into winter and fall, and so how to do it with smartphones in a library situation. So maybe a scavenger
hunt. So this is
hunt.
a podcast, or this is photography?
No, photography.
Okay.
No, I'm not doing any podcasting stuff yet, but I've got a few library classes coming up, which
nice.
I'm excited about. The one with kids should be fun, interesting, because I think we have to do all the photography inside. But I don't know. We'll see.
Well, you don't have to worry about exposure terribly much. You just got the phone, and
no, it's just the phones. Yeah, which is everybody's got the cameras.
Just fine.
Yeah. It's just trying to figure out how what are they going to photograph in there. But I got a list of things like colors and book covers and portraits of their parents or something like that. So anyway,
Joel Meyerowitz has a really good book for kids.
Does he?
I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, I've forgotten the name of it. It's very brightly colored.
Is it still? Oh,
yeah. It's got a big eye on it.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Let me write
maybe
that
just
down.
take a run through that. I mean, to give you some inspiration.
Yeah, I've seen it. I saw it at the APAD show, I think, or it's I can't remember the publisher that I saw it, but I did see it. Yeah. Or I saw it anyway, whatever. So, sorry. A lot of news. I don't know. I'll try to keep it short because we want to get into the show, but
you've been to other things too.
I've been to other things. Well, first I'll go into, first I finally did receive, I put in an order in for the Fuji X100 VI in February, and I had gotten an email about a month ago saying, oh, don't expect it until October 15th. I was like, okay. I was resigned to that, and I don't care. And, I've got enough cameras to keep me busy, but it showed up 2 months early. Showed up 2 weeks ago. And
so you did like a fancy unboxing and all of that. And
I did a fancy unboxing because I want to show off that I've got it. Nobody else has it. Yeah, no. My gosh, I'm watching all these people do this stuff on, on Facebook. I'm part of a X100 VI group, and people put their pictures of they just the box is there. And of course, for those of us who didn't have the camera, oh, great, thanks. Why are you showing that? Right. So when I get it, I said, well, everybody else is posting pictures of their X100, so I posted a shot just to be a real pain in the butt here. So, it is fine. It is an update to the X100 series. It's got the little bendy screen, which I find kind of useful for doing street photography. I put a grip on it this time, so I have a little bit more of a handle on it.
Yeah.
It's slightly heavier. This is not a real review, and I'm not going to do a real review, but this is my, me telling you.
We'll put a splashy, clickbaity title on this.
Yeah, that's right. But for the YouTube thumbnail, I'll put up these, we'll make silly faces with the camera. It's just worth buying. Anyway, I'm finding it like a nice, the one I have now is the X100F. So it's a nice upgrade from that. The lens is a little bit better, wider open. I'm noticing it's pretty sharp, wide open. So
this is a 40 megapixel, right? The VI.
It is. It's the big one. And that I'm finding probably the most useful thing because I like to crop into my pictures. Mm-hmm. And so having that extra space, especially with a 35 equivalent lens on there, means I can pull in a little bit more stuff from if I'm shooting across the street or something like that. And the other thing I noticed that it's really, really good in low light. The low light, the high ISOs, I could regularly shoot in like 6,400 or even 12,000, and it doesn't seem to break a sweat. So there's something about it, even with that high megapixel small APS-C sensor. At least for me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, for the first picture I took was of Opie, and he was on underneath my desk, and it was dark, and I think the camera was set to 12,000. Had a little trouble focusing on his eyes because I didn't update the firmware, but the noise levels, if you want to call it the grain, whatever we're going to call it, was I barely noticed it, and especially when I zoomed in, did my pixel peeping. And so, yeah, it seems like it is a nice upgrade for that line, I think. I don't know what more they could do with that camera, for like the next thing. Right. Unless they, add more film simulations. But I think there's like and part of me is like, enough with the film simulations, right? Like with the film simulations, and then with everybody making recipes for it, right. So everybody's recombining the stuff. There's more than enough things to choose from. So I'm not sure how many more internal, I don't know how many more internal film simulations Fuji needs to make. Of course, this is me saying it now, and then next year they'll come out with this and that. And I'm like, ooh.
Well, there'll be, expired Super Double X pan from 1948.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All the sliders are in one direction.
Yeah. Maybe that's what they'll do. They'll add more processing features in the camera. Anyway, I'm enjoying it a lot, and it feels nice. It's again that camera. That size camera, that format. I'm getting the words wrong. That
form factor.
Form factor. Thank you. Ugh. That form factor really pulls me into, or draws me into like wanting to walk the streets and do stuff. It's just, I don't know why that is. Why that than other cameras? I don't know, but it does. It just has this pull.
Sort of the way I feel about my E3s, my XE3s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's odd that it's odd that a camera would do that. Because one would think like, does it really matter what camera you have? Because otherwise I could just use my phone or something like that. Because that's just as not noticeable as any other camera. But there's something about this one that pulls me in. Having that bendy screen makes a big difference. Doing that twin lens reflex style shooting when you're looking down and shooting, that's very helpful. So anyway. I wouldn't say it's an endorsement. I think it's a good camera. I don't know if it's worth that wait, but that's what happened. It was a long wait, and I didn't really care that much, and I'm happy to have it. I'm really happy to go shoot with it. So yeah, I brought it with me last night when I went to see a talk with Sean Tucker.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was actually a quick invite. I think it was like 2 weeks ago. I got an invite or an email saying that he was going to be in New York doing a talk on his book. So the book that we talked about when he was on the show, The Meaning and the Making.
Yeah.
He was doing a small talk about that. And so, it was a little coffee shop on just off of 6th Avenue, a very strange little coffee shop, but it was a bookstore as well. It seems sort of out of place in a way.
Okay.
Because it's incorporated, like 6th Avenue in the 40s is all like banks and these, tall buildings. And there's just little coffee shop off to the side that's full of books where they put the books in color order. And I think they're like used books. It's not a brand new bookstore. It's like used books, but
okay.
But they're real books. I think you can buy them there too. You can buy books there. But so he had this little gathering. There might have been 25, 30 people there, but it was intimate. and he did sort of an encapsulation of his book, bringing in his own voice further to it. And so I got a chance to hang out with him for a couple of minutes. I didn't want to bung up too much, but he remembered us.
Cool.
He remembered our show, and he did ask how I was doing,
Very
which moved me a lot, because he remembered, the circumstances and stuff. And what I found about him, like in person, was that he's very like, he is the person, right? He is the same person in his book that he writes, is the same person that's on the YouTube channel and in person. And, and I think you can get a sense of somebody, especially if you're like, for me, I resonate a lot with what he talks about. And, he's not the person who's putting on an act, which, you go through YouTube channels and, I think half the people
it's a show.
It's a show. Yeah.
Is.
And I really feel from him that he's always been sincere about what he's doing, and he's successful at it as well. And he's also very, personable. And so I really had that experience with him. It was almost also funny, because it was almost like I knew him already. When I walked in, I was like one of the first people who walked in. I'm like, I was like, "Hey, Sean, how you doing?" He's like, "Okay, great." I was like, "Wait a minute, I never met the guy in person." So yeah, it was about an hour talk, and then about a half an hour for some questions. And I did bring up a question. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was really talking about the sort of dichotomy between being able to share your pictures. He was talking about social media and how we can share pictures so quickly, but in a sense, he's talking about photography, and sort of what we talk about a lot too is slowing down, right? And social media is so the opposite of that. So social media sharing pictures is the opposite of slowing down and looking at photography. And I also said, I wonder how we are going to deal with, as photography as an art form has been relegated for the most part into this thing that we look at on our phones for 1.2 seconds, 2 inches by 3 inches. It's one of the few art forms that's been compressed into this thing. So I can't remember his answer, but it was a good little talk. So I was really, really happy to be able to go out into the city. And after the talk, I was a little inspired. I actually met up with a couple of people out there who were talking. So it was a nice little meet up there. And I went to the street corner, because I was on 6th Avenue and 46th Street, I think. 46th Street. And that's right next to Times Square. So I was thinking about going to Times Square, because Times Square at night, with a camera is a lot of fun. But I was like, and I started, while he was talking, I was sitting near the window, and I kept seeing these pedicabs coming by. Pedicabs are, might be modern rickshaws, right? So there's a bicycle in the front and a little cab for 2 people in the back. And there's a big business of this here for the tourists. But what I noticed is a lot of them now are putting up like little neon signs or glowy lights in the little cabin part.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And they all have different things. They all have different patterns. And I'm watching these things go by because I was sitting near the window while Sean was talking. So I'm, catching my eye. I'm seeing these things. I'm like, maybe I need to go and grab some shots. So when the talk was done, I just had, when you come out of a talk like that or something like that, you're fired up to take pictures or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I stood on the corner for a little while, and I used the X100 to do some slow pan shots of these pedicabs going back, and that was a lot of fun. And I realized I haven't gone into the city to do any kind of photography for a while, and nighttime photography is actually a lot of fun, especially with this camera, where it just has a little bit more leeway in terms of low light work. And Times Square or that area is pretty brightly lit, so you can do a lot of fun stuff. So anyway, those are the 2 things I've been talking a lot. I've been what have you been doing?
Good. What have I been doing? I just went to Saskatchewan to visit with my mom for a while and help her clean up her garden and help her and my sister do some pickling of some beans and cucumbers. It's very, very domestic and rural.
There's a very city mouse, country mouse thing going on right now.
Well, but I'm both city mouse and country mouse, so right. I can ease. It's not strange to me to go back there. So.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess that's a gift I have. I don't know, whatever. But I also had the opportunity to try to keep my exercise up, to go out in the mornings with the phone. And I brought all my Fuji gear with me because you never know. But I walked around town with my phone, and I was sort of inspired by previous work I'd done and by a picture of yours. Actually, there's a picture of a cow behind a fence. Remember the cow?
Yeah, the cow that just
It's sort of like, I am the cow. You are looking at me, right? It's the thing itself. The picture is about the thing itself. So that was going through my mind, and I'm just taking pictures of things. There's a car. I take a picture of the car. There's a shed by the high school. I take a picture of the shed. There's the back of a building, and it's an interesting shape, and it's got a white door, and I'll take a picture of that. And they're all dead centered in the middle of the frame, like a 4:5 aspect ratio. I made a point of constraining it that way, and did my black and white, my trademark black and white processing. I sprinkled my own fairy dust on it, which sounds disgusting. But and it sorry, it's inappropriate. I can't. I'm cranky. I'm a little bit off today. I
think you're actually pretty on. What are you talking about?
Okay. Well, okay. So anyway, so I have 5 or 8, or I don't know, 8 pictures of things that are things in the picture. And with this is the first time I've really dealt with the higher resolution and the HEIC format and all that kind of stuff. And I'm zooming in, pinching, pulling, and looking at these images, and I could print these suckers. They look good.
Is this something that you're doing for the first, you're just realizing it for the first time? Is this a new phone
no,
or
I've
something?
done this sort of thing before, but this is the first time where, in 50 years previous, you would have set up a view camera practically to do this kind of formal. It's very formal, which I love. It's sort of like, you walk by these things, they're mundane things. And because they're mostly lighter colored in the way I do my processing, the whites they start almost get blocked up, right? So I call it glowy whites, right? So they almost radiate, being pretentious here, but they have a kind of radiation coming from them as a subject. Radiance, yes, radiance, luminance. Try and find every Ansel Adams word I can think of.
Yeah.
And so they kind of fit the bill there. And so it's really satisfying going around going, I took a picture of this car. And it's funny
just with your phone too.
Just with the phone, yeah.
Yeah. And what was drawing your attention, object wise? What was what pulled you to take a shot of something?
Well, it started with a car, and was like a mid-70s Lincoln Mark V or something. So it was an old Lincoln Coupe, and it was white. And this time of year, where I grew up out there are these tiny little bugs. I call them gnats. They're probably not gnats, but they collect on the front of the cars, and it's disgusting. It's sort of like it's this field of little black dots all over the front of the car. And you don't notice it. The car just looks a little gray on the front, but if you would see a print of this, or you zoomed in, you would see the front of the car is just covered. So there's a kind of an in joke, like a little prairie joke there, that here's this car, typical of the cars that would have been driven around when I was a kid there, covered with bugs. And this was like jumping straight back to my childhood. And then that got me going. And then I'm walking, and then there's a shed behind my old high school. And it's just a corrugated metal shed. And I just took a picture of it broadside, and it's like that, that corrugated textured metal, and it's white as well. And so it jumps off the page, and jumps off the print or picture. It just was just the thinginess of it, or whatever the word is. It's presence. Like, here's a mundane thing, and we're jacking it up for this picture. Things that you walk by every day. Now we're turning it into something bigger or with greater significance. And I guess my childhood is coming through it. I mean, these pictures kind of remind me of a image that I took earlier this year of a soccer frame of a soccer goal in a field that's just a couple blocks away from the house here, and it's painted white, so it has that glow thing, and it's this big rectangle, and so the pattern that I seem to have picked up was I'm taking pictures of rectangular things. so it's black and white pictures of rectangular things that are glowy. So it's very satisfying.
What drew you to use the phone instead of one of your other cameras? Just
because I was going out for my walk, and that
so it wasn't
that first
really a photo
morning,
thing. It was just
it was like, well, I'm gonna have the phone with me, and I would probably take pictures of something, and then it kind of coalesced after I had the picture of that car, and then I came back to the house after my walk, of the car in the shed. I'm like, okay, now there's something going on here. I'm gonna pursue this a little bit.
That's really interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And the photos that you're creating on the phone, they're obviously good enough for printing. And yeah. Or would you consider printing them?
Well, or put them in a book or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I created a private album for myself called The Thing Itself.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that name.
And I'm going to go back and get the picture of the soccer net or the soccer goal or the frame and all that, and put them in there, shovel them in there, and just see if there's something I could do with them, whether it's print them or make it a zine or whatever.
Oh,
I mean, I could see it being a horizontal formatted booklet zine kind of thing. Yeah.
Well, that's really
cool. You don't see horizontal
no, not that
books much, and I think it would be an interesting form factor. Anyway, so that was my weekend.
That is cool. Yeah, weekend. And do you think you're going to do? It doesn't matter what camera you're shooting with. It's whatever the subject is. Like we'll draw you in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm finding them on my walks, I mean, it'll definitely be the phone, and I don't. And we talked about this a little bit with Gino, which doesn't matter that you took it with the phone. No, it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
The pictures are great. So
I do sometimes on my Facebook page when I post some shots, especially of the neighborhood, I will sometimes put that I photographed it with the phone as kind of an education thing, because in part of my motivation to that, or the reason why I want to do that, is because I want people to, in a way, stop thinking about the phone as some it's not a serious camera, or like I really want that to be sort of to go away, right? I don't know if I'm doing it the right way by saying this stuff was.
I think that some people think that it's a flex. Like, I'm such a good photographer, I can take a good picture even with the phone. Look at me.
Well, yeah, no, I get that could be, I can see where that comes across. And of course I both someone like you and me who have been doing photography for a while, we can say that in some way. We just have experience. Not to pat our own backs, but we worked hard to get to these points where we can use pretty much, we understand the limits of equipment and cameras, and we know what we can do with them and what we can't do with them. And that comes from experience. And so we can't deny that, but I think sometimes my goal by doing that is to really, even though I'm mentioning that it's with a camera, I want people to understand, like, you can take good pictures with whatever you have. Like, if you have a camera, you have a smartphone, fine. Just learn how to use it. Just learn how to look at things, So in a way, that's kind of, people go, oh, that's with a phone. I'm like, yeah, duh, you can take great shots. You don't have to buy, the Leica Q3 to take great shots with.
No, also, I should say the in camera processing, I use portrait mode with the standard light, and now it looks a little bit more view camera-y because the background goes out of focus, which is really gives them, it helps separate the subject from the background even more.
Exactly.
So between the radiance
The radiation,
and the shallow, the fake shallow depth of field, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
The pictures look more like they're from a large format camera.
Yeah. Well, you can either use the portrait mode or then import them into Lightroom and use Lightroom's new blur feature on the phone is actually not so bad. And so, we talk about it being fake and stuff, but ultimately it's like the picture that's produced. What's being said with it, and at this point it doesn't matter, so well, awesome. That's really cool. I like that you had that experience. I'd like to see these. I know you showed some of the pictures. Did you show all of the pictures in our group?
They're all up on my Instagram now.
They're on your Instagram.
I think all of them are on my Instagram. So
right. So it means I have to actually launch Instagram to see. All right, I'll do that. Fine.
Well,
fine.
You do that. That's
fine. Yeah.
What you're gonna have to do. I just put them up there.
Okay, cool. I thought you might have shared them in our collective group. I know you shared some of the shots of the cars.
I shared the first four, I think. Yeah, I shared the first couple, the first 3 or 4.
Yeah, all right.
Going to see Sean Tucker wasn't the only thing.
Going to see Sean Tucker wasn't the only thing. And there is a place in the city called I'm gonna get the name. I'm gonna Fotographista, Fotographista. It's a sort of large gallery, coffee shop, bookstore, all photography related, and they currently have a show of Vivian Maier's work. They also have a show of Bruce Gilden's, but we're not going to be talking about Bruce tonight. I wanted to talk about Vivian Maier's because this is the first time I've seen a show of her work in a formal environment. And
just for a footnote, I did see a Vivian Maier show here in Calgary in 2019. Actually, was it early in 2020? It was the last public thing I did before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This show's been advertised everywhere for a long time, and I made sure that I wanted to go see it because they're also closing down this location, which I'm also very embarrassed that if this is the first time I've been there. And what a place it is. Ground floor on 22nd Street and Park Avenue is like it's a photo bookstore and a cafe, and like it looks like the lobby of a museum. And then you go up on the elevator. They have 4 floors that I know of. There's a top floor, which is a little gallery, but it's like I can't describe it. It looks like it's a 19th century photo studio, right?
Cool.
With giant skylights. It almost looks like the inside of a barn, with like wooden beams and stuff like this. And the inside they have these nice little chairs that you can sit down on. They have a stage, and I guess they have presentations there and whatnot. I'm really embarrassed. I haven't gone to this thing before. I've been always thinking, I'm going to go. I just haven't done this thing. It's like if you live in New York, how often do you go to the Statue of Liberty? They had a little bit of a show up there from another photographer who I'd like to actually talk about at some other point in the future. I've got some pictures. I'll show them to you later. He was doing expired Polaroid film portraits. He had portraits on Spring Street in New York City. Portraits of photographers, a shot of Ralph Gibson, shot of Jamel Shabazz, and a few other people. Anyway, but there was 2 floors devoted to Vivian Maier's work. And I only thought there was 1 floor, and then I went to it, and I was like, oh, there's 2 floors. So it was a giant show of her work. And I realized we've never talked about her work, sort of in depth in the show. And I'm not sure how much we can do in a half an hour or how much time we got left for the show. But I thought, I thought it was your idea to come up with for us to discuss this, because now we've both seen her work in person. It was fantastic. And so, Vivian Maier's work might be divisive amongst photographers. And, there's some people saying it's not so great, and other people are, going head over heels over it. I'm on the latter side of that. I haven't really gotten a chance to look at her work in print form, which was amazing. It was amazing. Not every shot was great, there was a selection of her color work, not a lot of good, good stuff, because it was like machine prints that she might have had made at a drugstore or something like that. So they were kind of fadey and stuff like that. And I didn't see a lot of strength in the color. At least I think they almost should have left the color out of the show, because it just wasn't enough of it, and it didn't make an impact compared to the black and white stuff. And the sections were broken down into, let's see. I mean, there was. I'm reading from the plaques that they had up. One was subtle gestures, so close-ups of hands and stuff. Self-portraits. They had a selection of her self-portraits, which she loved to do. Theater of the Ordinary was one section, and the last one was Remarkable Identities, and it was just her fixated on faces and stuff. And so this was sort of broken up into multiple sections. They had some of her 8mm films that they were showing, because she walked around with a film camera, and those were, again, there was no style coming out of that. It was just more like of a record of, and she was like photographing people walking, like their legs and stuff like that. So she was seeming to do.
So it wasn't the kids that, because in the documentary, which we'd seen from a few years ago, there was she sometimes shot the kids that she was babysitting or nannying.
Nannying, yeah. Is that a word?
Nanny, I don't know. That she was looking after. She was responsible for.
No, they only had some audio of her talking to one of her kids, which was really interesting. It was hard to hear, but you could hear her voice talking about like putting on, asking the kids to put their sweater on and stuff like that. And it was so. Once you could hear it, it was really, it was touching in a way to hear that voice coming, like her being nanny, motherly, caring. So there was a real personal part that felt like I could identify with so easily. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and we should talk about the documentary a little bit too after this, because we should compare notes on the shows we saw. There was some of her work that she had printed, and they had it juxtaposed to whoever had made the prints for the show. And she was a terrible printer. She did not know how to, this is not meant as a criticism of her, because like I can imagine when I was on the darkroom, I wasn't the best printer, even though I was learning with Sid Kaplan, who was probably one of the best black and white printers in New York City, if not in the country. It didn't stick with me, so I wasn't really a good printer. So, whoever printed this show took this. I don't know if we could talk about this, but elevated her work to this point that was just unbelievable. If it was a show of her work, like looking at those machine prints, that the color ones. Maybe this is it, because those are straight from, machine. There's no work on them, or her own prints, which she was also cropping a lot. I don't know if you saw any. I don't know if you had any of those in your show.
No, there was not. Okay. There was none of those. No, there was just from the John Maloof collection. Those were.
So they had
about 10 inches across, right? They were a fair size.
10 by 10, 11 by. Yeah. Actually, I think they were all about the same size. But occasionally there was maybe like 3 or 4 panels that had her original shot, or like a contact sheet of her work, which the contact sheet would be showing the full frame. Her crop and her print compared to the print and crop that was actually, there was no cropping in this show, by the way. Whoever was printing, it was printing everything full frame. So when they made the selections for the show, and I'm sure this is the same with the show you saw, they're taking the entire image into account.
Whereas, and her frame is great.
Her frame is great, but she didn't. What was interesting is that in the few prints that she had, they were all cropped, and her frame was not great. So if this had been a show of just her work where she had printed the show, I think she would have been lost in obscurity. The fact that this stuff was found and appraised and seen for what it is, and then given the attention that it deserves, brought her work, into the stratosphere. I was blown away by the quality of the prints, by the subject matter, by what she was capturing. Again, not every shot was great, but like when it was seen in the whole context of the rest of like the section that it was in, I was blown away by this stuff. And I was really, really happy that I got to see this stuff as print. And what was nice, they also had her hat. They had her Rolleiflex there. They had this Leica camera, which didn't even have a model number on it. And it had I think it was a 90 millimeter lens because it said 9 centimeters. So 9 centimeters would be 90 millimeters. It was really and it was really kind of ugly and beat up. It didn't look like anything that would be like something, but they had that in a box. But her Rolly was there too, and her hat, and I don't know if they had anything else there. So there wasn't a lot of personal stuff there. That would have been nice to see some of her personal stuff. So, but tell me about your experience with it, since we, I don't want this to be a one-way conversation.
Well, no, I mean, I was struck the same as you were. I was very quiet. Like, I remember we were talking last year, or it was last summer, about the Deanne Arbus exhibit and how it was kind of emotionally draining for me because of the subject matter, what she covered. This was different. This was like transported back to the mid-50s and early 60s. An appreciation for her ability to use the Rolly and the depth of character she gets from the faces. And being a woman, I think it makes a difference that the way the subject responds to her and how they're being photographed. It looked like most of the pictures that she took of the people that she photographed that knew that they were being photographed or were engaged in conversation with her or whatever. But there's a gentleness to her observation that I thought was really good. She captured the time, and her form is good, and going to the prints, like the whatever film she was using, and I don't know, I don't remember. I think maybe I did, but the negatives that she produced must have been pretty good, because just there's one picture that she shared with me of basically a street portrait of Lena Horne walking, and the texture on her blouse is just stunning. Just what she was able to capture on film and what the printers were able to do. It was just very arresting. I was very quiet at the end I went with a group. I went with my Beers and Cameras group, actually, to go see it. And we chatted a little bit about it. And, and my observation was, not all of them were great. But in terms of the history of American street photography, I think she fits in there. I don't think there's any doubt of that. I think that's she's owed a place that way in that.
Sorry, I was going to say, I think I don't know if it was in the show or something like that, or I read it, but I think she did. I don't know if she processed the film herself, but I think she was very meticulous about how it was to be processed. I think there was some indication of notes or something to a developer, so she had a very desire. She had a desire. I know,
because I just watched the because I had told my mother that you had been to the exhibit, and I said, "Have you seen Finding Vivian Maier, the documentary?" She said, "No." Well, come on, sit down. So, trying to get my mother to sit down and watch a documentary.
Oh, well, so tell me about that.
A bit of a challenge. So, and I had seen it before, and I actually saw a premiere here in Calgary at the Art Cinema here. Saw it when it debuted, and it was like all of the photo nerds from around the city. I know you. So it was fun to go see that. And the movie, or sorry, the documentary was as much or more about Vivian Maier's character and her relationship with the people and the children that she was a nanny for and all that kind of stuff. But for me, the story is really more about the photography part. And And there was this kind of a feeling that she was constrained. And when we looked at the pictures and what I saw on the web, when Maloof started posting, and I don't know if you remember those days was it 2009?
Yeah.
When he started posting the pictures on the website and there was all this traction, and I was going through all these pictures, they're great and everything. And I'm like, there was a kind of a sameness to all the pictures because it's just what Maloof had in front of him, of course, yeah, whatever. But and then I learned in the documentary, and what resonated with me again, seeing it in the documentary, is she did all this work as much when she had kids pushing a stroller as when she had free time to herself. And the whole thing about she wanted a job where she had the freedom to go out on the street and do the photography and the little cassette tape recordings that she was making in the grocery store and all these strange little things that she was doing. I thought, went to her character, but her way to get her creativity in, picking a job that she was able to. So that was interesting to me.
Like just deliberately looking for that kind of work so that she could do that. What a great thing to walk around with a kid and a camera, because the kid is like your beard, right?
Yeah.
It's it breaks the ice. I know there's a self-portrait of her that I use in my one of my street photo classes is sort of the introduction to her, and it's her and one of the kids she's taking care of and she's photographing through a storefront. So it's a self-portrait with this child. And so I imagine that doesn't show up that much. I mean, although there is a section in there where she's photographing children. Those are actually some of the best shots I thought of the kids. They were just amazing. But, to walk around, her personality is she's from France, I believe.
Yeah, she was born in New York City.
But she lived in France. I mean, I was saying, didn't she spend a lot of time there? She had the accent.
Bit of time, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole idea in the documentary was they thought her accent was put on. And one of the guys that they talked to was a linguist who said he was very pedantic about her accent that she put on, that the vowels were too long or not long enough or whatever.
Well, you could say the same of Katharine Hepburn. They all went to the I mean Cary Grant, right?
Yeah.
They all went to this school of learning how to speak in a certain way. I mean, anyway. But she's got this sort of, I want to say pushy personality. I mean, I guess if you're going to be a nanny, you have to have some kind of authority, and, if you can wrangle kids, you can probably wrangle people on the street too, to get them to, pose or you can just approach them to take a picture. I mean, she's got a picture of Lena Horne, and Lena Horne was pretty famous at the time. That she was taking the picture. And so, you can wrangle Lena Horne for a second to grab a shot. And apparently she has other shots of other celebrities too. I didn't see them in the show, but there are other celebrities in, I don't know if they're New York or Chicago that she photographed. But the whole, we all, and this is not a new story for everybody who's listening to this, right? There might be some people who are listening to this who don't. I'm actually surprised when I teach my class. I said, how many people know about Vivian Maier? Because it was a very social media thing that happened, and maybe it's because it's 2009, so that's a bit of years ago now already, which is kind of weird to say. Yeah. So maybe some people are just too young to have paid attention to it. But again, it's one of those things that I would think more people would know about. Like when you think about a photographer, more people would know about her than maybe Ansel Adams.
And it started a lot of conversations in our periphery of people who are not involved in photography. It's like, what's this Vivian Maier thing? Or I saw, or there were some teenagers that were around us in the show when we went. And they were like, they had not been exposed to quote unquote street photography. They thought it was the best thing ever. Oh, look, the candid aspect of, so different from what's on the smartphone. And when you think 2009 is only 2 years into the iPhone, it's happening too fast, man. It's happening too fast. Yeah. So there wasn't even really an entrenched smartphone, street image culture there. Yeah. But I just remember these young people going, this is amazing. Like, look at this guy. He's fallen asleep on the train or whatever. And this woman, and they're like, how did she do all this? And I'm like,
maybe it's
a
like
good
it was a perfect
photographer.
storm of things, like her
Yeah.
stuff being found, and the phone just starting off, or Instagram just starting off at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it was a couple of years into the iPhone, but a lot of people are still using their computers and a lot of websites and stuff. But what was I going to say? Damn it!
Was it about the show or the documentary?
Well, no. Okay, so I was going to say that everybody knows her. A lot of people know her story, but not everybody know. The elevator speech about her story is that she may have been a hoarder, and there were things perhaps she might have had some mental issues, and why would she have a storage locker full of undeveloped film and stuff like that? And so from if you skim these, if you do the Cliff Notes version of her story, it can sound like, well, is her photography a result of some imbalance, like something's going on with her life story that people like to hold on to. And I think that's just the way people are now, or I think always been, like, you always want to kind of hear the dirt on somebody. And, given our lives, we know that, any story like this is more than just that surface stuff. We don't know why she had a storage locker full of film and processing, undeveloped film. Maybe it's because she couldn't afford to process it all, right?
Yep.
Or like me, I got this bag of, 10 rolls of 120 film that I have yet to process. Now, I don't know, thousands of it, but I just haven't gotten around to it,
Right.
It doesn't, all these things don't add up to somebody necessarily who's, I don't want to say mentally imbalanced, which is a really hard, I don't even think we should be allowed to say that, because we're all mentally unbalanced if we want to start adding these things together, so when people approach her story from that point of view, that, oh, well, whatever consequence, whatever conclusions they make from this. Yes, she did some strange things, but put anybody's life under a microscope, and we've all done these strange things. So,
well, if she's on the fringe or a bit of an outsider, that's sort of an essential quality for a street photographer. I'm sorry, but that's just,
well, yeah. I mean, looking at the list of, let's go down the list of street photographers.
Yeah.
The other one I was thinking about when I was looking at the show is Gary Winogrand. I mean, in the sense of just New York urban, but another one who was more interested in maybe taking more pictures than looking back at what he has done, because he also passed away with some enormous amount of film unprocessed, and pictures on no contact sheets and stuff like that, and the list, I'm sure, is going to go on, and on and on and on. So there's an article which I didn't quite read. I just did a little skim of it. But I'll put the link in the show notes because it was interesting. It's from the New Republic, and it just talks about the trouble with writing about Vivian Maier. But it's actually a little bit of a critique of a biography of her. So if anybody's interested, you could read that. But that's going down, another way. But when someone looks at her story from that point of view, from some sort of like armchair psychological thing, then it can diminish the work, right? Like the work has some sort of tinge to it, or taint to it, or something, whatever you want to say, that, oh, well, okay, in order for you to be a successful street photographer, you have to be a hoarder, or you have to be, whatever the label is that Vivian Maier is. And it's a little aggravating when I see something like that. And again, all I can do is relate to my own life. And, when I'm gone and someone's looking through my stuff, if anybody ever bothers that, I mean, what are the stories is someone going to make up about, my life story? So anyway.
Well, I remember in the documentary, and the discussion was a little bit after we went to the show, and we were talking the morality of publishing this work posthumously anyway. Would she have wanted it?
Well,
I think we are better served by having them revealed, and that we know of her and about her.
But that's two different points. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, right? She may not have wanted her stuff published, and we're better off for having it. Like,
that's true. Yes, that's right. Okay. Well, I didn't say it right.
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just jumping down your throat, or I'm not. I'm actually not trying to jump down your throat. I'm just. We are better off. I talk about this again with my class. Like I say, we are. It's great that this stuff didn't get tossed. Like somebody went through the wrong person might have bought that storage space. It might not have been able to see the potential in the stuff and just threw all this stuff in the garbage. And how many times has that happened before already with other people who have done the same thing? But there was some indication somewhere that she had reached out to a printer in Europe someplace. So there's some evidence or some thought that she was kind of paying attention to maybe having her stuff at some point.
That was in the documentary.
It was in the documentary too. I forgot. I haven't seen.
Yeah, she had made it. She'd basically discussed a proposal of she's got boxes, and she said, and I mean boxes and boxes of negatives to have printed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on her notes, she would always write, even when it was the local lab, she'd say, please use, not glossy, not glossy. She didn't want glossy prints. But yeah, that was just sort of underway in those final years. And then
when she died, who claimed her? Like, how did the people knew that she was dead?
That's a good question. I mean, okay. I don't. I remember in the story early on in the documentary, John Maloof is talking about he had figured out, had seen all the receipts for all the film it was developed in prints and such, and came up with the name, V. Maier, whatever, and then started calling around figuring out the area codes in Chicago and so on, and calling around and finally got a name, and then started looking around, searching for her, and found the obit of her, which was just weeks or months before. He did this research, so he just missed her by a short margin, and it was just a write-up in the paper that he found
about her death.
About her death, yeah, it was a death notice.
Yeah. Yes, we are better off for this, and I look at this again. It's another time capsule of a period that neither you or I were around, and so there's actually I also went to see the Paul McCartney show at the Brooklyn Museum, his photography show that he did during between 63 and 64.
Okay, so that's the first American tour.
The first American tour, right? So it was very limited to that. And part of my experience of going through that was I love the Beatles, and there was a nostalgia about that, but I realized it wasn't my history. It's not my period of time. My history is in the 70s. That's when I was growing up and stuff. And there were, I was getting the second round of Beatles stuff or something was going on. So it's really interesting for those of us who are not of the time that we're seeing, we're not alive during the shots, many of the shots that Vivian Maier's taking in the 50s, and you and me in the early 60s. And a lot of people you're talking about, the younger people, certainly are not. And yet we're somehow drawn to this time period of her work. And so it is this open door with her work too, seeing places in New York that I recognize,
I just noticed tonight that one picture of the woman standing in front of the public library.
Library, yeah.
I've been on those steps.
Yes. Anytime I see, I've been seeing actually a lot of pictures of in places that we walked down Fifth Avenue when you're in town. And I've actually I think I might have seen the place where we photographed those two women who were taking pictures of each other.
Yeah.
I think I've seen another picture for someone who had taken in the 50s or 60s. I'm not entirely sure, and I can't remember who the picture was from. But yeah,
I have the same thing of the day I was walking by myself at Broadway and Canal. There's a picture of it's a kind of more of a famous picture, and I've forgotten the photographer's name. Maybe a street guy, and it's like, I know that building. I had shot down Canal from Broadway because I went to the McDonald's there to have a soda. And so I'm like, I know exactly where that is. And then I look at the picture I took of a woman who was holding a pair of glasses and her eyes was closed, kind of a fashion-y kind of thing. And it's the same building right there. There it is. That's what I nailed it. So
I always love that.
That's so much fun. I love that. That triangulation that you can do,
Yeah. And I see her, I mean, she's, photographing in New York, Chicago. I think she did some in Boston, but not a lot. I think most of her stuff was Chicago and New York. But again, it all there is a familiarness to it. Anyway, I walked out of the show. First of all, they had this downstairs at the gallery, which was full of books, and I showed you pictures of it. Right? I was taking pictures and texting them to you, and it was all I could do. I actually asked what my whole plan was. I was going to go to the show, and then I thought maybe I'd go out and get lunch in the neighborhood. Anyway, my timing was weird, and so I went down there, and I had this was the third day I've had the camera with me. Or actually, this is the first week I had the X100V with me. So I'm already wired up by looking at her pictures. When you come out of a show like that, you're like, I gotta start. I'm in the city, and I gotta take pictures. So I come out of that, and I go down to the reception area and I say, look, can I come back in if I want to just buy some books? And they're like, yeah, you can come back in. I mean, the wall was, I would have walked out with a lot of books, right? I do want to get the book from I don't know if there's a book specifically about the show, but there is a book from, what is the company, Taschen?
Yeah.
Pronouncing that
Taschen.
Right?
I want to say Taschen. Yeah.
I think that's the book that has the same prints in it. Anyway, I said, well, let me go and, I'm going to go walk the streets. I'm going to go find some lunch, and then I'll come back and buy some books. And anyway, I took a one-way trip down to Union Square, and I was just taking pictures along the way. I was just like, I set the camera up to black and white, and I was like, okay, here we go. And I was fired up in my, like, just having seen her work, and even Bruce Gilden's work after that, and even skimmed through some of the books in there, and I was like, so I ended up just making a one-way trip to the subway, and I'm like, look, I'm right near the subway. Let me just get in and save myself a few $100s. Yeah. And so I did manage to walk out of there with books, but I have to go back to this place before they close up. I think they're going to try to find a new location. So that's a good thing, but this location was really nice. And there's a bunch of books I want to get, but that coming out of a show like that, or even the McCartney show, which was in a different thing, a different in some way it was. Some way it was, when looking at Paul McCartney stuff, and it felt very personal. Yeah, Maier stuff somehow also feels personal. I mean, there's a lot of her personality comes out in those pictures, and so it felt more intimate, and also compared to Bruce Gilden's pictures downstairs. I want to talk about that too much, but what a night and day difference of work. And I spent a lot of time in the Gilden show too. It was only one floor's worth of stuff, and the prints were huge. And he's coming across it, street photography or people or portraits in such a different way. If it was only Bruce Gilden, I'm not sure I would have walked out of that show. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I walked out with that same kind of energy, but the Maier's work was really captured something. And so this is what I did. By the way, I went and I saw it on a Thursday. I saw it last Thursday. So a week ago. We're Wednesday right now. So last Thursday I went to see the show. Yeah. I had a street photography class at the library on Saturday, right? And so what I did, was it the library? Yeah, it was the library. What I did was I retooled my slideshow, because usually I'm showing a bunch of photographers. And so what I did was I stripped out a few photographers in there, and I took all the shots that I put up in that gallery, because I basically went around in the gallery. I took pictures of every one of her prints, because I wanted to make a slideshow for my street photography students. I said, well, let's do a deep dive as much as we can on Vivian Maier. Like, go see the show before it closes. But if not, here's what, like, to me is a very approachable style of street photography, very intimate style of street photography. It's also very urban, so I'm in Brooklyn, and so it's like I love to show pictures that sort of fit what I think people can do. Like, the class that I'm teaching is in a library that's very Art Deco on Eastern Parkway, and it's a Grand Army Plaza, and there's a lot of, if you just walked out the door, you could see like, oh, Maier's could have taken pictures here, right? Because except for the people's outfits, like everything kind of looks, the cars, but everything kind of looks the same from like her time period. So I wanted to make it approachable so that someone could relate to it. I don't know if the class felt the same way, but I was still gushing from that. I was like, got to see this stuff. Yeah. And I just did like a little slideshow of her stuff. So I said, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm just going to show you the pictures and experience it. So I was wired up for that, and I might leave that in for the next time I do a street photography class. I think her work sort of really is, her story is really interesting. So if you go and see the documentary or you read about her, all the stuff that's just people want to spend time with, there's that. There's the I think the stuff that we can all resonate with, the secrets, the person who we are, and then this curiosity of looking with seeing the world with a camera and recording it, and then the whole posthumous thing. There's this sort of one of the things I like to tell my students is that your photography is going to outlive you, most likely, and what you take pictures of today, what is it going to tell people in the future about the time that you live in now, right? And I think her picture, for some reason, I don't know, I think you'd say this about a lot of other people, but for some reason her work, really is a sort of exclamation point on that idea that I tell the students. So
yeah, I would agree completely.
Yeah. So
amazing. I'm glad you got to see that show, and it's a good thing.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I said this. I said this already. The prints were, for those people who are listening to this show who don't get a chance, you might be in some place where you can't, necessarily get into the city or go to see a pro. But if you can ever get a chance to see a photography show in a gallery and look at prints, it is nothing like looking at, stuff on a computer, or I would say a book. If you have a really good printed book, it's okay, but it's still not the same. There's something almost three-dimensional about, really well printed work, and three-dimensional in a way that's not like 3D, Marvel Universe kind of shit. But just something, brings out black and white or color photography that's just printed with care. You can just really see that. So I recommend highly, if you're in the city, or you're going to be able to come to New York City in the near future. The Maier show is up until, hang on a second. I think it's September. Fotographista. There we go. I'm doing this live, so sorry. Graphista. Let's see. Okay, tickets and tours. $20. Yeah, the show's $20. And let's see. Oh, darn it. It wasn't their website. Anyway, I think they're closing up shop in September. So try to get there before they have to close up, because they'll obviously be closed for a while before they find a new place. So that's kind of weird. Yeah, they're considered a museum. So I would say
very
that it's
cool.
a museum. 45,000 square feet, Romanesque revival landmark. Opened up in December of 2019. So they haven't been around for long. So I would just see if you could get there and go see the show. And then the Bruce Gilden pictures are also worth seeing. So anyway, so I think I don't know if that's a deep dive enough or not, but I think right, here we go, until September 29th. So you got 31 days ish, I think. Yeah, 31 days. Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Cool.
So are we done? Yeah, we talked a long time.
Yeah, we talk about different things too, which is good.
We had a lot to catch up on. Yeah,
I guess so.
So yeah. Oh, one last thing. There's the I'll put the website on the Photographiska website on our show notes. But the other show that's up there, the guy I was talking about who did Polaroids, Jean-Andre Antoine from Print Street with Love. So he did all these expired Fuji instant film print. So everything's 4x5. And he shot with a Crown Graphic camera. Cool. And they're these great portraits. And what's so nice about them is that the prints are really kind of rough looking, and they're printed at size. A few of them are printed large with the picture with the Polaroid sort of pasted on the person's face. So the face is covered with the Polaroid that is enlarged, but it's all on Prince Street in New York City. And it's just a nice, I wish I had a better kind of venue in it because it's a little bit sort of crammed together, but the photos are just really nice. Made me want to get my Polaroid camera out and see if I could find that kind of film again. So anyway, All right. I think we should wrap.
All right.
Where are we looking for you in the world of things and people and places?
Well, you can find me on Vero and Twitter /X at WRosinPhoto. Instagram, which is where I post most of my stuff, including the stuff we were talking about tonight. The thing itself, pictures from my hometown, that's at Ward Rosin Fine Art. On Facebook, you can find me at Ward Rosin Photo. And my personal website is called therosin.ca, ROSIN.ca. And our unofficial sponsor is Ornis Photo, ORNIS.photo. What about you, Antonio? Where can we find you in the internets?
Well, just look for me on Instagram at amrosariophoto and Vero at amrosario. My website is amrosario.com. Just type in AM Rosario, you'll find me. Facebook is Rosario Photo, so facebook.com Rosario Photo. Our we have a Substack newsletter. We just put out an article that you had written a while back, but it seems to have resonated with a lot of people. So we've gotten a bunch of people signing up based on having just read your article.
Cool. I have to write some more, I guess. Huh?
Yeah. Well, I actually like Substack. It's a nice way to sort of it's a nice I don't know. It's like a nice outlet for this kind of stuff. Anyway, our Substack is streetshots.substack.com. So please subscribe to us. We're not crazy in putting out lots of stuff, but I think that the newsletters that we put out are gems. Also, if you want to leave us a voicemail or a question, go to speakpipe.com/streetshots, and you can leave us a short little voice message. We'd love to have some questions that we can answer on a day that we're recording. And if you want to support the show, and we could use the support sometimes, but you could buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Antonio Rosario. So that's it. And another one in the can, as it were. Yeah. So I wonder if anybody from the class is listening to this podcast. You guys subscribe? Did you listen? I hope so.
Sign up.
Yeah. So anyway, this is we're now our next one will be, well, not quite fall, but we're moving along here. So thanks for listening to us tonight. And Ward, thanks for hanging out with me as well.
Always a pleasure.
And it is a pleasure, and I can't wait to run into my other room where there's air conditioning because I'm boiling in here.
Do it while you still can.
I will. So anyway, thanks everybody, and everybody have a good night, and see you in a couple of weeks.
See you later. Good night. You got a cold brew going there? What do you got there?
Yeah, cold brew. Yeah.
That's
nice. Going to be the only thing that keeps me cool, I think.
Cool and properly caffeinated.
Properly
caffeinated.
I can't even talk.
Are you a Niebuhr?
No.